Welcome back to our team previews for fantasy football. Today's going to be the Denver Broncos. And if you've been following along, obviously we're covering over every single team, every fantasy relevant player. If I miss a player, just go ahead and comment in the chat down below. Or if you want me to go in deeper dive on any player, feel free to just drop a comment below and I will get to it as soon as I can, okay? If it's your first time here, make sure you drop a subscription. Also, like the page or like the post, whatever it is. Y'all know what I mean. But we're going over the Denver Broncos today in this fantasy team preview, and this offense looks a lot different than it did last year. Russell Wilson is now gone. Jerry Jeudy has been traded. So some of the key components for this team over the last couple of years are now gone, but Sean Payton still remains. And the team didn't have a whole lot of draft capital to work with outside of a first-round pick. So this team spent that on getting a quarterback. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. Now, to start off this quarterback thing, obviously there's a quarterback controversy somewhat here, right? We don't know who the starter is going to be. But in my opinion, in fantasy football, redraft especially, there ain't really much here. You got Zach Wilson, who was just traded from the Jets to the Broncos, and then Jarrett Stidham, who was there last year. So I'm sure those two are going to be battling it out during the offseason for potentially a starting role. But then in the draft, the Denver Broncos used that number 12 pick that they had to take Bo Nix out of Oregon, which I think is a really good pick, especially for Sean Payton and what he likes to do within offense, quick reads, making accurate passes. Bo Nix, good frame there, 6'2", 210 pounds. I think he's a starting candidate at some point this season, whether that's game one after the offseason, after training camp and preseason, and he comes in and starts initially, or if this Denver thing kind of goes off the rails a little bit and then he starts. There's not a lot of expectations for Denver. So Bo Nix coming in, who's been in college for a while, is an older guy. He's a great fit for Sean Payton, and I think a great fit to start early on in the process, because this Bronco team knows they're not making the playoffs. Like, I don't think there's any expectations for that. So he's got a decent size. He can use his legs a little bit, ran a 4.7 at the combine. So, not great speed, but he can handle his own. He's a smart kid. I think Bo Nix will have a nice future with Sean Payton, as long as he's not asked to do too much. Kind of resembles to me like, just a good thrower of football. I like Bo Nix. I think that he can be settled in this offense and be at least a decent option for dynasty teams later on in redraft. I'm out completely. I don't want any parts of this in redraft. At running back, Javonte Williams. Now, with Sean Payton, typically we've seen good running back play. We always look at what he did in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara. And I think it was easy to get excited about Javonte Williams as a rookie. Then he had his ACL injury. Last year, he came back from that. He wasn't even seeing full carries until about mid-season. After week 7, that's when we started seeing him get more than 50% of the work of the targets, or of 50% of the playing time. That's when we saw that. We saw that come later on. And he was the RB29 on the year. I think coming off the injury, we knew it could be a down year for Javonte Williams, but I think we were expecting even more out of him. 774 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 47 catches, though, which to me is a good indicator that the team wanted to get him involved in the passing game. So when it comes to Javonte Williams, I would expect better in a second season coming off of the ACL injury. And to him, I think we can expect to see more of what Javonte Williams looked like pre-injury this year. There's other players we've seen that have come back from ACL injuries, and it takes them a while. Like Breece Hall was kind of the exception, but even he started to look better towards the second half of last year. I think we see that out of Javonte Williams this season. I'm buying a Javonte Williams bounce back. Maybe he's not elite, but I think at RB3 levels, we could get a nice value there, especially when this team is going to have to rely on the run game if Bo Nix happens to be their starter, or they're depending on, keeping their quarterbacks upright. So Javonte Williams, a buy at RB3 levels. I think we could get him back in RB3 levels and be very happy with the performance. We'll see where ADP shakes out after the summer. As far as Jaleel McLaughlin, he was a factor last season. Towards the end of the year, came and had some nice games. I'm not expecting him to be much, but kind of a gadget guy. potential flex during bye weeks if things don't pan out with Javonte Williams. Not a whole lot of excitement there. If you're looking for him to be a full-time component to this offense, I think we could find some like Shane Vereen-ish type value where he catches the ball a lot. Outside of that, I don't think there's a whole lot of upside there for him. He remains to be undrafted. Like, he needs to be undrafted on waivers. Pick him up. If anything happens, just pick his ass up. All right, and then when it comes to receiver, I think this is probably the most intriguing part of this entire offense. It's the receivers, right? Obviously, quarterback will be something we talk about later, and Javonte is a nice player, obviously. But, like, where do we find value on this team? I think receiver is where we might see some surprise, to say the least. Last year, with Jerry Jeudy on the field last year, Courtland Sutton finishes the wide receiver 35. But a lot of this was in a nice string of games that he had. He had, consecutive touchdowns in games for a minute. It seemed like he was scoring every week. But now Jerry Jeudy is gone. Jerry Jeudy is now out. He is in Cleveland. But the quarterback situation just isn't ideal. So even though you had 10 touchdowns last year, you had over 700 yards, he's going to be the wide receiver 1. Where are we taking? Courtland Sutton is the big question. Are we paying the price for last year's touchdowns? Are we getting a little bit of discount based on the quarterback situation? I'd want to see how this quarterback situation pans out. If it's Bo Nix starting or if it's Zach Wilson starting, I actually don't mind either of those two. If Courtland Sutton can be like my wide receiver 4, maybe even wide receiver 5. That's about where I'd want him this year. I see a little bit of upside if it's like Bo Nix and he figures things out. But the touchdowns got to be there, which is what catapulted his value last year. Sutton had 10 touchdowns. In order for him to be in that wide receiver 3 to 4 range, he's going to need to score a lot of touchdowns again this year. So my prediction for Courtland Sutton is that we see a lot of the same. We see some monster games. We see some times where things dry out for him. But overall, we should expect somewhere in the wide receiver 4 range for Courtland Sutton. This team also drafted Marvin Mims last year. He looks to be the number 2 now after Jerry Jeudy is gone. I think Marvin Mims will step up into the number 2 wide receiver spot. He had a pretty mediocre rookie campaign. I know there were some people that really liked Marvin Mims coming out last year, but only 22 catches on the year, did more damage, I feel like, in special teams than he did on the field, 377 yards. So not a whole lot there for Marvin Mims when you're talking about production or you're talking about, hey, excitement for this upcoming year. I think what we're just looking at with this Denver team is just a lot of opportunities target-wise with Jerry Jeudy now gone. So Marvin Mims, if he can get up to 50, 60 catches, I'm sure at some point may be an attractive like waiver pickup, or there may be people who are like, hey, he might be a name where everybody's like, yo, I'm super excited about Marvin Mims. He's going to have opportunity. I'm not as excited. I feel like he's going to be more of a gadget guy in this offense, more of a threat weapon-wise for Sean Payton than a consistent wide receiver in the passing game. Somebody who might be a little bit more than that is Troy Franklin, getting Bo Nix, his college teammate, drafted in the 3rd round. Troy Franklin should be a good addition for this team. And a lot of people were saying that they lucked out with this pick, that getting these two connected together, Troy Franklin, some big plays downfield, will be a nice addition to this offense. So it remains to be seen how it shakes out. I think for fantasy purposes, I'm not really looking at him as a draftable component, but somebody I'll be looking at early on. Where Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, and Courtland Sutton sit after week 3 or 4 is going to be a big thing depending on who the quarterback is for this team. So as we find out more about the quarterback situation, I think then we can start to shake up, and we got to see these guys on the field, see how they are on the depth chart. For now, Courtland Sutton's the only one that I really trust if I'm going to draft any of them. I think both Mims and Troy Franklin, if I had to pick out of the two younger guys, I probably would go with the upside of Troy Franklin just because of the connection with Bo Nix if that happens. And then at tight end, Greg Dulcich coming off of an injury. What can we expect? He didn't really have a good season last year, got hurt for a majority of the year. I'm not expecting really anything out of Greg Dulcich. And they drafted him at the time to be a receiver, but now this is Sean Payton's offense. He, even when he played, he didn't look that great. So quarterback's terrible. This entire Denver offense, if you're being real, outside of Javonte Williams, is kind of stay away land. I'd want to stay away, but to me, you might be able to find some gems here. There may be a piece down the stretch that helps fantasy playoff teams. But for me, I'm out on most of this Denver offense. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. If you're feeling a way about my comments on Denver, man, talk to me. Talk to me in the comments. Give me some feedback. Maybe I'll change my tune over summer. But for now, this looks to be a unit that I'll stay away from completely. So that does it for this episode of the Denver Broncos. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.